This training is going to show you how to sell anything to anybody. So essentially what I'm going to go over is my pitching framework. I call it the Pitch Codex that I teach. I've taught this to thousands of sales reps at this point. And essentially this is how we pitch anything that we do. And you could use this for literally anything that you could sell. It especially works for any type of services, coaching, courses, consulting, high ticket stuff. It works great for SaaS. So let's get into it. So essentially, a couple things. This framework has three parts. It has the high level promise, the bridge, and the delivery. So the high level promise is essentially going to be literally what it sounds like. We're going to state at the very, very top what this is not and what this is at the highest level of benefit. The bridge is going to be broken down in either 3 or 4 pillars or steps or milestones. And essentially what those are is exactly what I said. It's like the milestones of not what you're going to give them. It's not the deliverables. It's what we're going to get done. And if you think of their current situation and desired situation as the two endpoints, the bridge and the pillars and the steps are the milestones in between. So it's like first we got to get this done, then we got to get this done, then we got to get this done, then we got to get this done, okay? The last point is the delivery, which is where you tell them actually what they get, which is funny enough, that's the lowest part of this, all right? That's the shortest part. The majority is spent on how we're going to get there and what we're going to get done on the way there. And what's very, very key is the bridge needs to be the simultaneous explanation of why everything they tried in the past has failed and why this is going to be different. Okay, so I'll repeat that. The simultaneous explanation of why everything they tried in the past has failed and why this is going to be different. So for example, if you read a sales letter on the ketogenic diet, the first thing they'll do is they'll explain to you why you haven't been able to lose weight because of insulin resistance. And now, once we get you in a state of ketosis, you'll finally be able to lose the weight that you want and blah, 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 blah. Okay? So you see how by the very nature of me explaining to you the product I'm selling, which is like a coaching program on the ketogenic diet or something, by the very nature of explaining that, I also explain to you why you failed in the past and why this is going to be different, right? Because I use a problem-based mechanism in insulin resistance and a solution-based mechanism in the form of ketosis. Hopefully that makes sense. Like the intermittent fasting is another great example in the health space. Another one, if you guys know Russell Brunson, the first thing he'll talk about is he'll say the real reason you haven't been able to get customers is because we all know business cards don't work, right? If you go to your business card and or you go to a trade show and pass out a bunch of business cards, do you get much business? No. Well, your website is essentially the equivalent of a business card. So essentially what you really need to do to be able to get customers online is through funnels. And once you can implement funnels, then you can get floods of new customers online, predictable and at scale. Because he wants you to get you to believe that funnels are the reason you have been able to get customers online in the past, and also the reason why you will in the future. One is the lack thereof, one is the solution. And once he gets you sold on the method, then you buy ClickFunnels as the byproduct, right? So think about it this way, this is why it's called the thesis. Essentially what I mentioned with the ketogenic diet, needing ketosis to be able to lose weight, and the only way to do that is through a specific coaching program, that is the thesis. Right? Russell Brunson calls it the dominant belief. But a lot of older school marketers called it the marketing thesis. With Russell's, he needs to get you to believe that the best, most effective, only way to get customers online is through funnels. And that the only way to do that is through ClickFunnels. So you see, really the pillars are explaining and demonstrating the thesis and getting buy-in on the thesis, okay? That is the most important part. It's not necessarily very focused on the product. Because once I get you bought in on the thesis, I know you're going to buy the product as a byproduct of that belief. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay? So let's go into the high-level promise. So here's how we start. Now again, to zoom out for a second, we start the call with introduction, right? That's rapport, frame the call. Then we go into the information gathering phase, which essentially is where we ask questions that elicit the 7 beliefs the prospect needs to have to buy. There's another training on that. You can check it out if you want to. Then we go into the transition. Okay, so the transition is essentially a language pattern. It's very, very simple. There's other videos on this channel that explain it, that essentially just talk about how we can transition to the pitch in a way that eliminates sales resistance and actually gets the prospect to ask you to pitch them. And then we get to the pitch, which we covered as 3 parts: high-level promise, bridge, and delivery. Okay, so now that we're at the high-level promise, what we're gonna say is, okay, great. And do you have a pen and pad? All right, on your pen and pad, write out 1 through 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what you do is you wait until because sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I got my pen and pad. And then you say, write out 1 through 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you just shut up. You'll hear them like kind of shuffling around. Now they sit down and they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they're ready. Now that's key is because a lot of times, and again, if you watch my training on introduction, you'll know I like to assess by using pen and pad if they're in a buying situation. Because who knows, maybe during the middle of the call, if it's an audio call, they got up and started walking around, who knows? So like I wanna sit them down and make sure, boom, they're listening, they're gonna write this stuff down and internalize it. Writing it down is so key for them to get to like really understand it, conceptualize it, and internalize it. I was like, write out 1 through 4, direct command. And you could write out 1 through 4 if you want to. No, it's write out 1 through 4, direct command. You know, again, like you're telling them what to do. And then, so what I'll say is, once they're like, oh, okay, I'm ready, I'll say, cool. And I wait till they say they're ready. Cool. Well, let me preface this by saying everything we do is all customized. Okay, so for you specifically, it's gonna be 4 things. 4 things to help you go from essentially like you're just starting off in your real estate business to the point to where you have new leads, specifically higher end listings in your market coming in every single week. You have a process to close them and the framework to build a team so you can remove yourself from your business and work on your business, not in your business, and actually have an asset that produces you cash flow independent of your time. That's what this is all about. So you can see how right there, what I did is I stated what this is about, helping you go from blank to blank. At the end of the day, here's what it is. So very, very key there. Hopefully you understand that. Now, so that was the high level promise. Now we're gonna go in the pillars, right? So what you wanna do here is essentially create 4 pillars. You could do 3 as well. I usually do 4. And the first 2 have to be paradigm shifts. So the first 2 have to explain why they failed in the past and why this is gonna be different. Why they failed in the past is why this is gonna be different. The sale is gonna hinge on the first 2. Pillar number 3 is just future pacing the stuff you're gonna do with them after they've already accomplished 1 and 2, which is really the main result, which builds more certainty that they're going to accomplishment. And then pillar number 4 is the same thing, more future pacing. So the first 2 are paradigm shift, then the last 2 are more future pacing. And the reason for that is, 1, it's like when you're future pacing, oh yeah, and then step 3 is we're gonna do all of this stuff. They kind of assume like, oh damn, like we're actually gonna do this. Like he's even gonna help me with stuff after I finish it. So there's a lot of future pacing and building of certainty going on there. The other thing that's happening there is it's eliminating the fear of success. Because a lot of times people don't want to accomplish the next problem, they don't want to fix their problem because they're afraid of the problem they're gonna get as a result of accomplishing that problem. Like a lot of times people won't scale their company because they're afraid of having too many clients and their clients not getting results and their fulfillment system breaking. But it's a fictitious fear. So a lot of times if you can essentially address that in the pitch, it eliminates the fear of success and it builds the certainty, okay? So we need to break it down. So the first one, again, is gonna be one of those paradigm shifts, right? So it's gonna go something like this, all right? So, we state the high level promise and I'll say, cool, makes sense? Awesome. So the very first thing we're gonna do is we're going to pillar 1, right? Maybe the pillar 1's called build out your authority campaign. So next to pillar 1, write out authority campaign. Right, so again, like I'll literally direct commands. Write out authority campaign next to number 1. You can see I'm like very guiding them. Hey guys, we'll get back to the content in a second, but I have a quick favor to ask. We don't run any ads or really do a lot of promotions on this channel at all, but the one thing that would really help us out if you're getting value from this is if you could share it on your socials. So specifically sharing it on your Instagram story through a screenshot or just pressing share and really sharing it on any platform. The main way we plan to grow this isn't through ads, it's through word of mouth. So if you're getting value, that's the one thing you could do. Make sure you tag me on Instagram at Cole Thomas Gordon. And with that said, back to the content. Now here's the framework of how this looks like. I'll say, look, so when it comes to desired outcome, here's the problem. Most people out there do incorrect behavior. And because of that, they end up having problem and ultimately experience the consequences of that problem. So instead, what we do is your specific method, which allows you to benefit and ultimately the benefit of that benefit. Does that make sense? Cool. And so what are your thoughts on that? All right, now let me just walk through everything I said there. All right, so I said, look, when it comes to what you want, here's the problem. And what I said is most people out there are making this mistake, and here's the consequence of that mistake. Here's the reason why that mistake's a mistake and what happens if they don't fix it. So what we do instead is our specific methodology that allows us to benefit and ultimately benefit of that benefit. So what I do here is I basically use an us versus them frame and inadvertently a lot of times a new versus old frame, but I use an us versus them frame and I'm like, hey, most people out there, they're all making this mistake. And then what I do is I consequence link, right? Or I problem link. So I'm like, they make this mistake, which means this, and then ultimately they're screwed, right? So what we do instead, us versus them frame, is our specific methodology, and then I benefit link. I say, which allows you to benefit, which ultimately means benefit of that benefit. Okay, we'll go through an example in a second. Then I ended off by saying, does that make sense, right? That's tie down number one. Here's what's really key. You always want to do these tie downs. And then, but when you say, does that make sense? They're always going to say yes, right? Then you want to say, what are your thoughts on that? So you want to get these double tie downs. Now, when you say, any thoughts on that? They say, nope. If you say, what are your thoughts on that? They'll actually answer a question of what their thoughts are. It's very interesting. So, and that's just because it's a direct command, and you're really not, you're not asking them if they want to give you their thoughts. You're asking them to give you their thoughts. Hopefully that makes sense. What are your thoughts on that? And I want to see what they say. Okay? Because what I want to do is I want to get buy-in on every single one of these pillars. So what's happening here is a gradualization and intensification. So I'm getting these micro commitments all down my thesis. And anywhere where we slip off, we can have a conversation and address it. So what happens in a pitch? A bad pitch is an anvil drop. Okay, one of my friends called it overcooking the pitch. And it's where like, you're like, okay man, get ready to get pen and pad. I'm gonna go through all this stuff. Let's hold all questions to the end, and you can let me know if you can ask questions. You ready to go? I can't even believe that's taught, guys, but like, that is the most stupid thing I've ever seen. So then you run through Speedy Gonzalez of this pitch. They give up on trying to take notes. They forget all the questions that they have, and then they want to think about it. Or they ask you to send them something because you weren't helpful enough and you weren't able to help them internalize it. Okay? So what's very, very key here is that you space these things out, and your pitch should be a dialogue, not an anvil drop. And it should have a great back and forth cadence. And a good way you do that is through, does that make sense? Cool. What are your thoughts on that? Now, who knows what they're going to say there? If they, and what you could do is you can actually throw in a third tie down, and you could say, cool, so do you feel like based on earlier when we talked about blank, that implementing this will be able to help you blank? Okay, well, why though? Right? So you can even get them selling you on why this is going to help you fix the problem. Or you could say, so do you see how earlier on the call when you were telling me, you were really having trouble even though you were removing calories, losing weight? Do you see how once we get you to a state of ketosis, it's actually probably going to be a lot easier and you can eat more food? See what I did there? I'm like, do you see how this is going to be different than essentially what helped you fail in the past? Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Right? So key points, us versus them frame, problem linking, benefit linking. And one thing I didn't mention is you want your pitch to be the simultaneous explanation of why everything they tried in the past has failed and why this is going to be different. Okay? So what's really key is you see how I said, most people out there are doing this, here's the mistake with that. What we do instead on here is do this, and this is why it works. So you see how by the nature of me just even explaining my solution, they're getting value and they're getting insight of why they failed in the past. Very, 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 very key. Right? And like if you read books like Insight Selling, that's a whole thing. Challenger Sale, Insight Selling. There's so much literature written on this stuff. People buy when you shift something in them, right? When you provide an insight, when you break a belief and rebuild a new belief. One thing you want to do also in your pitches is you want to incorporate as much discovery as you can. So essentially, you want to, a lot of times if you can, and this would be kind of a different framework, is you could say, how earlier in the call you told me blank and it was kind of making you experience blank? Well, because of that very reason, what we do is method, which allows you to benefit opposed to consequence. And ultimately, this down the road will mean benefit of that benefit. So you can see how I can use these things. So when you incorporate a lot of what they say, it increases the power. I recommend writing out your pitch without having any incorporation of their language. And then with your note taking, you can start to bring that stuff back in later in the pitch. What you also want to do is multiple forms of proof. So I didn't do it in that example, but after I said, does that make sense? And you can even do this after, what are your thoughts on that? But usually, does that make sense? Cool. So for example, and then you can basically say like the reason why it works so well. Or what you could do is you could say, so for example, when we implemented this in my company in 2021 in December, this happened. Or for example, we had a client in your exact same industry who implemented this and previously was experiencing this. And now once they implemented it, they were able to get benefit and ultimately benefit, which is basically what you're looking for, right? Right. Okay, cool. So does that make sense? What are your thoughts on that? So you want to incorporate proofs because essentially what you're doing in your pitch is you're making claims and you need to provide proof to prove those claims to be true. Okay, and then make sure you do the double tie down. We talked about that. So let me give you an example. I'm gonna have to read this from the screen because it's a little bit It's a little bit drawn out and I don't have it by memory. So I could say, and this is essentially, I believe, all right, so just for giving an example, I used to sell something way back in the day where everybody in the industry thought that their problem was Facebook ads when it was really they had like a terrible offer with terrible economics that never, like the economics didn't work on paid traffic. So what I'd say is, okay, great. So the very first thing we're gonna do is help you build out your productized offer. So when it comes to dialing in your paid traffic, here's the issue, okay? Most coaches out there, they're complete, and I wouldn't do that on the sales call, by the way, guys, I'm just demonstrating for you. Most people out there are completely focused on their ads, their funnels, their CPCs, their CPLs, and when in reality, it's really the offer, especially the economics of that. So what they do is they spend a ton of money on ads, test a bunch of targeting, test a bunch of bidding, and ultimately, they're really just wasting money because they're building their house on a foundation of sand. Does that make sense? Cool. So what we do instead is we take you through an offer-intensive process to build out the offer that's positioned, number one, is unique, different, superior from your competitors in your marketplace. And when you can do that, when you are unique, different, superior, not only are your ads actually going to work because you're creating a blue ocean for yourself, but at the same time, because you position your way from the competition and you're not a commodity, what's gonna happen is you're actually gonna be able to command premium pricing, which is finally gonna make your economics work and your ROAS work on ads. Right? So instead of an ad strategy where we're lowering CPAs, we're actually creating a strategy where we're hiring LTVs, which is making the economics work because you have a blue ocean offer, which allows you to create premium pricing and actually get your ads to work. Does that make sense? Cool. What are your thoughts on that? So you see how I would do that? And I kind of went off there and I just sort of went on a little freestyle. But then what I would say after that is I would say, and you could even imbue this in the thing, you could say, so for example, you know earlier you said competitor XYZ is crushing it on ads and you can barely break even? Well, why is that? I mean, you're both offering the same thing or you're both marketing the same message. It's because of the economics of the offer. So that's the exact reason why we were also able to generate $1 million plus just off 150K ad spend last month for us. So instead of what you're doing, what we're going to do with you is we're going to, and then you see how I do that. So in that example, I could use, my results and, I can incorporate their language in to prove it to be true as well. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. So that would be pillar one. Pillar two is going to mimic pillar one as well. It's going to be a pretty heavy hitter, right? And it's going to cover the next thing, right? So for instance, if they get their offer right and now they're not building their house on a foundation of sand, what do you guys think is next? Probably building out the funnel. So you're not going to say, hey, we're going to build out your funnel. You're going to say, hey, we're going to make it sound a little bit more proprietary, right? Which it needs to embellish the reason why your thing is different. So maybe it's you're going to help them with a VSL. You're going to help them with a group funnel or whatever, right? Then the next step would be ads. So you see how it's like a linear thing here, and you just want to make it sound proprietary. Don't make it sound like bullshit. But your names, your pillars, like productized offer, that sounds proprietary, but it also doesn't sound like BS. Okay, don't say the XYZ black box system. That's stupid. You want it to sound like something that exists that the prospect hasn't heard of before. Like when I say ketosis, that exists. That's existed for a long time. The prospect hasn't heard that before. It's very, very key. So pillars one, pillar two, those are the big ones you want to get the buy-in on and get heavy tie downs. Pillars three and pillar four, that's just future pacing, and you can be a little bit lighter there. Because if you ask, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? After every single pillar, it gets a little bit redundant. So I like to do it on the first two, and then I kind of speed a little bit more through the last three and four because it's all just future pacing. And what they're gonna, it's like really kind of painting the picture of all the things they're gonna have once they fix the problems. Hopefully that makes sense. So that is essentially the pitch. We'll do another video. I'll actually record it next. So up here is another video if you want to see the next stage, which is called the committing phase. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Peace out.